Why is it that some musicians seem to just like know thousands of songs, literally be human jukeboxes, while other musicians struggle to ever play anything without reading notes on the page? In this video, I'm going to go over the secret that musicians use to learn and retain thousands of songs. You see, when I was in college, one of my professors told me, you got to learn tunes for life. That's an adage I've held on to for a long time because it's such a waste of time if you spend hours, dozens of hours working on a song only to have a week or a month go by and then you can't play it anymore. Now, if you want to learn a song and keep it in your mind, in your heart, in your ears, and your fingers forever, what you need to stop doing is stop thinking about each individual note and each individual chord. You see, in a jazz song, most jazz songs are 32 measures long, and usually there's at least one, maybe two chords in a measure. So if there's two chords in a measure on a song, that's 64 chords in a song. And not to mention, there's probably going to be even more melody notes than that, maybe 100 melody notes in a song. So if you're trying to learn a jazz song and it's like, oh my gosh, I have like all these chords I need to know when that song comes up. I have all these notes I need to know. It's so much information to hold on to. It's going to be impossible to learn one song, let alone have 2, 3, 5, 10, 100 songs in your arsenal at any given time. So instead of thinking about each individual note and chord, the pros that know thousands of songs think about the songs in chunks and gestures. So what do I mean by that? Well, when we think about chords and chunks, we want to think about the relationship the chords have to each other, not each chord by itself. You know, one of the first progressions people learn when they're learning jazz is a 2-5-1 progression. And the reason for this is that this appears all over jazz songs. A quick crash course on a 2-5-1 is that it's a chord progression in a key where you play a chord from the second note of the scale, a chord from the fifth note of the scale, and the chord from the first note of the scale. So if we're in C major, our 2-5-1 in C is a D minor 7, because D is the second note of C, right? Then we do a G7, because C, D, E, F, G is the fifth note. And then our 1 is C major 7. Let's listen to that one time. That progression appears all over jazz songs, and if I know that really well in any key, then when it comes up in a song, either from reading it or listening to it, I'm able to chunk that as one gesture as opposed to thinking about each individual chord. Let's go through a couple songs right now that have a 2-5-1 in the first A section. Autumn Leaves, C minor 7, F7, B flat major 7. Starts right off the bat with a 2-5-1. All the Things You Are, we go F minor, and then we go B flat minor, E flat 7, A flat major 7. 2-5-1 and A flat, right off the bat. Take the A Train. D minor 7, G7, C major 7. Our Love Is Here to Say. Goes G7 and then G minor 7, C7, F major 7. 2-5-1 right off the bat. So that's just 3 jazz songs right there. We could look at thousands of jazz songs and find 2-5-1s all over the place. And the power in learning this gesture, this idiom, this chunk, is that when it comes up in a song, you've now taken what was 3 chords that you had to learn and broken it down into one gesture. So if I go back to Autumn Leaves, if I'm learning Autumn Leaves and I'm just stuck thinking about each chord, I'm going to think C minor 7, F7, B flat major 7, E flat major 7, A minor 7 flat 5, D7 flat 9, G minor 7, G7, right? It's a lot. It's like 8 chords to learn in 8 measures. Whereas if I know, okay, it's 2-5-1 in B flat, then to the 4, and then minor 2-5-1 in G minor, and then G7 to bring us back to the C minor to do it again. 2-5-1 in G minor. All of a sudden, this 16 chords over 16 measures turned into like two bigger gestures with two connecting chords. And this thing that was like all this information, I took into chunks, said, oh, these chords are grouped together like this. So that's one thing to remember. And then it's chords grouped like this. So if you can start to learn the different idioms, starting with the 2-5-1, and identify them in the songs, it's going to take learning a song from being this thing where it's like, oh my gosh, I have to learn all of these notes to, oh, it's just this little chunk. And then it's going to be a lot easier to recall that instead of trying to think about all this stuff. The same can be true for melodies. You know, if you're thinking about the melody as like each individual note, that's a lot of information to keep up in your brain. We want to think about the gesture of the melody, the contour. What are the goal notes? How do those relate to the chord? And how do those create a bigger picture? So if we look at the melody to Autumn Leaves, it is 4 phrases, all with the same shape, just moving down in a step, right? It starts with this shape. Then it takes that exact shape, moves it down a step. Right? So instead of thinking of what are these 16 notes, I just think about what's the shape? And then what's the next shape? How's that related? Kind of think about what note am I starting on? What note am I shooting for? So like, then it does that again, right? And then it like rounds it out. Da, da, da. Going into the bridge, we had this kind of upward shape moving down. It flips it for the bridge. Da, 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 da. Right? So by thinking of it with those gestures, it's like, what are the notes we're landing on? What is the shape? Does that shape move? Does that shape kind of pervasive throughout the song? I'm taking this thing that could be note, 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 and thinking of it as just like chunks, contour, gestures. So if you're working on a song right now and you're struggling to memorize it, or maybe there's a song that like, it's like, wow, I worked this up, I had it memorized, and then 2 days went by and I lost my ability to play it. Look at the bigger picture of the song. See how the chords are related. Try to identify like a 5-1 or a 2-5-1. Try to identify if it goes to a different key center. Like, does it go to the 4 chord on the bridge, or does it go to the 6 on the bridge? And if you can identify that, that can help you start to see the bigger chunks. Start to see it, oh, it's like this 4 bars is one thing. And this 8 bars is one thing or 2 things. And then same with the melody. How is the melody actually chunked together? How can you actually find the big notes of the melody, the important ones to land on and focus on? And your ears and your fingers will help you just find the little notes in between, so you're not stuck trying to think about every single note. Because if that's your way of learning music, you're never going to have more than a few songs ready to go at any given moment. Thank you so much for watching this video. If this has been helpful, please click like and subscribe, and send it to your friend who's also struggling to learn music. I know you got one. Drop a comment and let me know, what do you want to learn more about? What was the aha moment in this video? And if you want to learn how you could level up your piano playing even faster, send me a DM on Instagram at Adventure with Danny to figure out how you could work with me. Happy practicing. Happy practicing!